Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. I'm Bart, and on this episode, I'm talking about the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team, a combo episode recapping the U.S. men's Gold Cup Group B stage, and then looking at the U.S. women's Group G play in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Glad you are here with me on this episode. Before we get into the conversation I had with Caleb Cook about both of these topics, I have to remind you to please follow the show on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod and subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcatcher you're listening right now. That way you get the daily show for Soccer Down Here. You'll get every episode of Soccer for Us, and you'll also get the other content that SDH puts out. You'll even get stuff covering USL, which is a great little feature that we have added this year to the SDH family. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation because it is a long one, talking about the U.S. men's national team's 3 wins in Group B of the CONCACAF Gold Cup and looking at the U.S. women playing 3 very tough matches in the group stage of the Olympics. All right, well, I am super excited to bring back on to the podcast someone whose voice and perspective I always appreciate and someone who has become a mainstay on here. It's Caleb Cook from USMNT Corner. Thanks for joining me, and how are we doing today?
Despite the Atlanta stuff, fantastic.
Yeah, luckily we can focus on U.S. soccer drama and not Atlanta United drama today.
Exactly. Doing good, though. Thanks for having me.
So U.S. goes 3-0 in the group stage, only concedes 1 goal, gets 3 wins, 9 points. What are your overall what do you evaluate when you look at that Gold Cup group stage? How did you evaluate it as a whole?
I mean, just to keep it short and simple, it's we got the job done, right? We talked about coming into the Gold Cup. What are we expecting? Do we want it to be just an experiment? Do we want to try to win the tournament? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think obviously we're doing a little bit of both. Which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're trying to win, and going 3-0 in the group stage is a good start. Has it been fantastic? No. I think we've learned a lot, and on to the quarters.
Yeah, I think that your point about yes, there are multiple goals of this Gold Cup, but ultimately you want to win. That's why you play competitive sports, and we're doing that. I think that we have to just take a step back also and remember that this roster is not a first-choice roster for the U.S. men's national team. So if you're looking at a performance that is lackluster like it was against Canada, the silver lining to that is many of these players would not be featuring or playing a crucial role for our full strength squad when we do play Canada in 2 months, a month and a half. So that's kind of the pump the brakes on super negative comments, but you can still evaluate the performance and go, it wasn't great. Mm-hmm. And overall, like you said, 3 wins, get the job done, win the group on to the quarterfinals. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's just quickly just run through all the matches we had. We'll give some thoughts and highlight some key things that we saw from the match. U.S. starts off with a 1-0 win over Haiti. Sam Vines gets a goal in the 8th minute. The big news for me out of this was that in the 13th minute, Paul Arriola comes off with an injury, something to his upper leg. I couldn't tell how bad it was, and reports after the day after seemed like it wasn't super serious. And we'll talk about this later, but CONCACAF did release today that they'll allow for medical swaps, if you will, in the roster. And I'm wondering if Arriola is one of those because we haven't seen him on the field since getting hurt in that Haiti match.
Yeah, DC United I think they came out with a post saying it's not a serious injury. He's still with the team training. Yeah. But, I mean, what does that really say?
Yeah, it seems like
we haven't seen him, so
yeah. Hopefully he's fine, but if we have to bring in someone else for him, then so be it. I mean, you have that opportunity here. But about the match against Haiti as a whole, again, Sam Vines gets a goal in the first 10 minutes. 8th minute in, we're up 1-0. I felt like we had chances before and after that, to really put the pressure on Haiti and look better than the scoreline indicated. What did you feel about that performance against Haiti?
I think you can take a couple things. Obviously, at the time, we had 2 games left. In hindsight, you can say it's kind of a trend of jumping out and getting on the board early.
It's a positive trend. I'll take that.
Absolutely, it's a positive trend. And I wonder if it's something that he's kind of preaching of get out, attack early, get on the board, and then just kind of coast and ride it out and get the win, kind of like tournament strategy,
Yeah.
I don't know if he would do that in a one-off game or anything like that, but in group play, I wonder if that was his thought process, because you could tell every time we scored early, other than Martinique, which is a different story, but there was a little bit of let off on the gas pedal. And then the other thing, people kind of, there were mixed emotions as far as the win. There were a lot of people saying, Haiti's not that good. We should have destroyed them, all that kind of stuff. But then their matchup versus, was it Mex? No. Who did they play? Oh, Martinique. And Martinique almost beat them, right? So it's showing that Martinique might have been a little bit better than we give them the credit for. Haiti might have been a little worse, maybe. You don't really know. It's hard to read these things. It's a tournament.
Right.
It happens. But, like we said earlier in the pod, at the end of the day, we got the job done. So,
yeah, I do think that we were a little bit better than the scoreline indicated, but I also felt like we were lucky to not concede because Haiti had some decent possession and some good chances.
They did.
But I think we could have scored more goals. I think that we were a little unlucky. Busio had a nice hit that was saved. I think Williamson hit the post. We had chances. Zimmerman, before Vine, Zimmerman had should have had a goal. I think Zardes or Robinson could have had goals. So Nico could have had a goal. Yeah, there were more clear-cut opportunities for us, and credit to the Haitian goalkeeper for keeping only 1 goal on his sheet. I just felt like it was an okay start to the tournament. I just think people freaked out because you looked at the juxtaposition of Canada beating Martinique 4-1, and you go, we only beat Haiti 1-0. Right. You got to also remember this Haitian team has been playing together, this team, a lot this summer. They had Nations League where they had the final 2 matches in the window of the group phase. Then they went to the playoff match where they've had 2 matches, and that was against Canada. And then they had the qualification for the Gold Cup where they had a couple matches. So they've played a lot together recently. And this U.S. team hasn't played. This collection of 23 guys has never really played together. And a lot of them haven't really played for the U.S. men's national team at all or very little.
That's a great point. And on the other side of that is when we played them, how often have these guys played together, for the U.S.? Right. So it's like the exact opposite side of the coin there. Yeah. That's a fantastic point.
So I think the Haiti 1-0 win, whatever, you get the win. In hindsight, would have liked to get a couple more goals so that the Canada match wouldn't have been as nervy. But hey, you get a win to start the group stage, start the tournament, and you're off. 6-1, the U.S. beats Martinique. Martinique is a weird ball in this tournament because some editions of the Gold Cup, they're really good. And other times you're like, how did you get here? And this is kind of one of those in between of why are you in this when there are other teams that had to qualify and you got in here automatically? But anyway, US 6, Martinique 1. Not quite as early, but we do get a, quote, early goal, if you will. Daryl DK in the 14th minute from Matthew Hoppe. DK gets a second goal, but it was actually an own goal, but then it was his goal, but then it was now an own goal in the 23rd minute. 2-0 at halftime. Then Miles Robinson scores on a header in the 50th minute. We give up a penalty, Kellen Acosta did, in the 64th minute. Then we had Giassi Zardes with a goal, Nico Gioacchini with a goal. And I'm missing one, but we got 6-1, whatever, fine. 6 goals. DK had another goal. My bad. So 2, maybe 3 goals for DK in his first start in a competitive match for the United States. Miles Robinson gets a goal off a set piece. I think it was a set piece. Yeah. And a couple of others that kind of go in. I mean, look, I said it. This Martinique team is not great. Some people, I don't know what they were complaining about. It was 6-1. I don't know what more you would want from a performance like this.
Yeah, I mean, they did what they were supposed to do. Beat up on the minnows, right? When you are faced with a weaker opposition like that, you look at the U.S. women, right, when they played Thailand. Yeah. I mean, there was no mercy. And the thing is, like, oh, it's rude. No, you're in group stage and goal differential matters. So if you can do it, you do it.
Yeah.
And they got it done.
This was exactly that. I mean, it was 6-1. The one goal off that they scored was on a pin. I mean, really, the U.S. did not concede a goal from open play the entire group stage. And a really stupid Kellyn Acosta foul led to a penalty. Other than that, I don't think Martinique was that threatening. I mean, sure, Martinique is always going to have players that are actually pretty decent attacking-wise. They're fun. But other than that, it wasn't like they presented a whole lot of threat. I thought that the U.S. was pretty solid in attack. I thought, for me, and I want to know your point of view on this, I think it was – I know that Berhalter put out the players in that lineup that he did. There are a lot of changes. But starting Sands in a back three was good. Starting Williamson and Busio in the midfield was good. Starting Hoppy at the left wing-ish kind of position was good. Mm-hmm. I really think that the Busio and Williamson making them starters gave us the momentum to get 6 goals because they're just naturally more progressive players. They are trying to go forward with the ball. They're not passing it sideways. They're not trying to go backwards. They are trying to turn and go upfield. And I think that was a big driver for why we scored so frequently. And it took a while, but there were constant chances. But I think that was the big driver, was specifically Busio and Williamson going forward, progressing the ball upfield. What do you think about
Well, I think those changes, it was almost like, well, we'll rest our guys from the first game and we'll play the second choice guys, quote unquote, against a weaker opposition. But in reality, those second choice guys look to be better than the ones that he played in the opening game versus Haiti.
And I don't think there's that far of a drop between Haiti and Martinique. It's significant, but it's not like Brazil to, I don't know, Cayman Islands,
Exactly. And then that's what I was talking about earlier with the whole, and I mixed them up talking about Haiti versus Martinique, but it was the fact that they played each other and it was a close game shows you that they were both semi, close to each other in level of competition. But the ability to progress the ball in the midfield, and that energy from Busio and Williamson to constantly be receiving it on the half turn and driving forward, and that is their first priority. They're not even looking to pass backwards unless they can't move forward. A lot of times people are getting it. Yeah, when I say people, I'm talking about Yule, clearly.
I was going to say, we'll talk about this guy in just a second.
It's almost like just immediate, let me play it back. There were so many times I've seen GIFs, I've seen little clips of videos people are posting where he could receive that ball, and if he takes it on the half turn, he's got 15 yards of space behind him, yet his first touch takes him backwards, and it allows the defense to close in, and he's playing a back pass to a center back for no reason. And here's my problem. Here's the way I look at things. When you're playing poor opposition, the things that you do well might not hold as much weight as the things that are done poorly. And this is what I'm saying. So a person who scores 2-3 goals versus Martinique, that's fantastic. And that second goal by DK was awesome, but it's Martinique. But when you struggle versus Martinique, I feel like that screams a lot louder. Does that make sense?
Yep, I agree. I think it's hard to, I agree. It's hard to look at the positives and go, oh, wow, that was great. But if you're struggling against a team like Haiti, or especially against a team like Martinique, that is a bigger alarm bell than sounding the trumpet on your positives.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think there were several people you can look at. I see several. A few that you can look at and say, listen, if they're struggling versus the Haitis and the Martiniques of the world, I don't really necessarily want to see what they're going to do in World Cup qualifying versus Canada versus Mexico versus El Salvador, who's playing really well right now.
Yeah.
Right. You got all these teams that they're going to be pushing. Costa Rica, are they the European powerhouses? No, but they're quality CONCACAF opponents. And we're going to have to play them, and we're going to have to perform, and we're going to have to get points. And I don't necessarily want to rely on a Yule in a World Cup qualifier in Central America. And my dude is just constantly playing it back, playing quote unquote safe, right?
So he has 15 caps right now for the U.S. men's national team because he did play again in the game against Canada. And of course, Greg Berhalter had to get him in against Martinique because reasons. I don't mean to say that, and I think you and I are on the same. This does not mean I think that Jackson Ewell is trash. Okay, right. I'm tired of people saying that these players are bad players. Period, because they are not. Christian Roldan is having a fantastic season in MLS right now.
Yep.
He's not good on the international level. That's okay. Plenty of players have been like that. Iko Para has not, I mean, granted, he hasn't had a lot of chances with the U.S. men's national team, but he's a player who, great in MLS, hasn't exactly shown well in a U.S. team. There is a difference. Some players aren't cut to be international caliber players, and that's okay.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that they're bad.
Right. And that's
does not mean they're trash.
I tweeted it a couple of days ago. All these Twitter keyboard warriors jumping on, calling these players Roldan, Zardes, Ewell, calling them trash, calling them bums, like all this kind of stuff. That's, to me, it's taken it too far. You can critique these players. You can say that it's not up to par. You can say that it was poor. All of those things without becoming some sort of negative troll, right? It's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah, or like attacking them as people almost. Like, oh, they're trash. And like,
yeah, exactly. They're better than you. So,
right. I mean, Jackson Ewell's still a pretty darn good MLS player.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see him. I don't want to invest any more time in him at the U.S. men's national team because it continues to just not be good enough.
And that's the line. That's
where I am. And I would rather play Busio because I don't – we'll just – you know what? Screw it. We're switching to the Canada game. Canada, we won 1-0. We'll talk about the Busio and Ewell conundrum because there is a conundrum here with playing a player like these.
Mm-hmm.
Canada, a significant step up in quality from Haiti and Martinique. You get a 1-0 win. Shaq Moore scores like less than 30 seconds into the game. Another early goal for the U.S. We scored in each of these 3 games. We scored in the first 15 minutes. I think that's a great trend, and I hope we keep that going. Walker Zimmerman goes down in the 14th minute after a nasty fall collision thing. Not sure what his status is. We have not heard from U.S. Soccer about that today that I've seen. Anyway, today was a rest day, so we may not hear about it until later in the week. Anyway, 1-0. This lineup, you had Turner in goal. I'm going to go through this lineup because this one I think matters. Turner in goal. You had Shaq Moore, the right wing back, Sam Vines, left wing back. Your 3 center backs were Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, James Sands. Sands getting a second start in that central center back role. Midfield was Gianluca Busio, Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta. And your 2 up top were Jesse Zardes and Daryl Dike. Now, I am glad that Berhalter is trying a different formation, right? He's been very married to the 4-3-3. He's kind of tried, we've seen that 3-4-3, which works with having 2 very specific types of midfielders that I don't know if we have on this roster. Mm-hmm. So I like the 3-5-2. I think that it's a good let me say this. I think the 3-5-2 is a great way to, especially now that now that Paul Arriola is injured for what we don't know, and Jonathan Lewis shockingly has proven to be ineffective at the international level. Who could have seen that coming? I think that the 3-5-2 is a great way to get the best out of this roster. Does that make sense?
I agree. I just wish it was a 3-5-2 and not a 5-3-2. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
And it's not something that, maybe it kind of looks like that. No, it was very, very specifically a 5-3-2, especially defensively. And it's also something that Berhalter has talked about. I forget who it was on Twitter, but they specifically asked him during one of the press conferences about, would the 3-5-2 be a possibility? And he answered them back and said specifically 5-3-2.
Yeah.
So it's something he's looking at. And
it probably is more of a 5-3-2 considering we're playing true wing backs, right? The players in that position are defenders. But what I had a problem with is that pulled those central mids a little too wide at times. It didn't allow the wing backs to get up.
Yeah. Well, and then, like I said, we'll get into it a little bit later, but defensively having that back line of five and then the three midfielders and then the two forwards trying to there was not a full press at all.
Yeah, it was difficult to watch DK and Zardes attempt to press
when you're
when there are only two
players high versus 3 to 4 Canadian players.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You can't press, right?
Yeah.
So then it's just sitting back. But then the Canadians are pushing numbers, and you've got 3 players in the midfield against 4 players in Canada's midfield.
Yep.
And anytime we did get a foot to the ball or make some sort of misstep from Canada or we knocked it down or something, there were no U.S. players around to pick up that second ball, and it fell right back to a Canadian player.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're just constantly taking pressure, which, again, like I said, we'll get into a little further down the timeline because there's specific moments where it kind of falls into that.
Yeah.
I think there's a moment where you can see the back three with Sands early in the game. He's pushing up as a 6 almost.
Yeah, in possession, Sands was moving forward.
Right. And
to
then
basically play that 6 role, the lowest of the midfielders to allow Busio to go forward.
Exactly.
The problem with that was, though, Leggett and Acosta went wide.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that just cut off Vines and especially Shaq Moore, who has been really good at getting up and down the wings.
Yeah.
It cut off their running lanes.
Yeah. Well, and then there was this huge gap once the back three became very flat. Sands kept dropping super deep.
Yeah.
And it might have been – I've got my notes somewhere. It may have been when Zimmerman went out.
Zimmerman going out definitely impacted how we defended and how we attacked.
It changed so much. And his passing, I'm telling you, it's so underrated. I'm glad people are finally paying attention to it. I'm a big Zimmerman fan. Do I think he needs to be stepping in and being a top 2? No.
Is he the next starter?
No. But for a guy to come in and do a job, absolutely he can do it. My question is,
I don't have any problem with him being in the top 4 center
absolutely
backs. And if he has to start against, let's put it this way, if he's starting against Canada on September 5th because you're spelling Brooks or Richards or your other starting center back in between 2 away games, I have no problem with that.
I'm comfortable.
I'm very comfortable with that.
And he's shown the ability that, this past few games in a team that's going to sit off a little bit more. He's got a little more time on the ball. He's shown that he can pick the passes out. He can hit the long balls. He can step into midfield with the ball. He has that ability. Can he do it against Mexico? I don't know. We haven't seen that.
We haven't really had a center back shown they can do that against Mexico, to be honest.
Exactly. So I have no problem with him stepping up and moving himself up the center back depth chart. He's shown that he can do it. But when he went out, it absolutely changed things.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because we lost him, or is it because we replaced him with Pines and no one had confidence?
Well, yeah, I think, okay, so I do want to address this because I said this on my head on Soccer Down Here this morning, and I don't mean this as a negative necessarily, like, oh, he's bad, but Miles Robinson still needs to learn how to be the commanding presence on a back line. And I don't mean big, physical, strong guy's going to win the ball in the air or dominate on a 1v1, because he's very good at all the actually technical things at playing center back, right? Mm. Very good footwork, very good winning balls in the air, very good winning balls on the dribble, very good at dispossessing and turning and going. I mean, everything that you need from a technical standpoint, Miles Robinson is doing well. But I need that man to step up and be a leader on the back line. And I think that was the issue, is when Zimmerman went out, Robinson had to take over that role, and that's just not where he's strong. And he's never really had to do that in his career.
Right.
Even now with Atlanta United, he's the more senior player, but it's clear that Anton Walks has been the leader of that back line. I think that was one issue. The second issue, as you mentioned with Donovan Pines, defensively, again, Pines pretty darn good. Did not have a problem with him defensively, minus like one or two things, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But definitely a downgrade when they talk about passing out of the back and just overall, just general possessing. He is not very good in possession. And that's not really his fault, because he has yet to play under a coach in MLS that wants to have the ball. Losada, definitely that's not his plan. And Ben Olsen, that was never the plan for DC either. Yeah. And I think that combination was what happened when Zimmerman was pulled out of the game. And it hurt us because we weren't able to truly possess the ball out of the back very well. Also, Turner is not good with ball at his feet. That doesn't help either. Right. But that leadership did go away when Robinson had to fill that role. And it just, you can tell that it's not what he's good at, on top of having to play slightly out of position by playing left center back. Mm-hmm. So the Zimmerman going down, definitely. I think if Zimmerman stays in the game, we may score another goal in that first half, because we still were attacking fairly well, because Canada hadn't quite gotten their teeth into the game yet.
Yeah, with Pines on my rewatch, I didn't think it was more of, well, let me say it this way. The first time I watched it, it was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is just not good enough. On the rewatch, there were things where it's like, okay, he just picked out a really nice pass there. That was a really nice defensive play. So I don't think it's the fact that he's just not really, really good. I think it was more that the dude was unbelievably nervous.
You could tell. I forget when it was, because I didn't write it down, but there was early in the second half, I believe, there was a time where he needed to, someone played him the ball and he just needed to like take a touch and pass it off to someone, and he didn't do either. And then there was another time where the ball was basically going back toward goal, but it wasn't something that Turner could come get necessarily. And he just like didn't pass it back to Turner, didn't head it back to Turner. Like there was zero idea that he knew what to do with the ball in an aggressive, attacking, possessive sense.
Yeah, and I think, it's the difference between a player that can do it and a player that can't, right? You've got Mark McKenzie. When we played Mexico, he made that poor mistake. It was obviously nerves. He said it was nerves. But what did he do? He rose to the occasion. You can tell he has that mental state, and maybe Europe plays a part in that. He
made a mistake. Like the thing about McKenzie is he's typically okay with his feet. Like that's not something that's ever been a knock on him. Is he's not like, I think the reason he got nervous or he made the mistake because he did feel the nerve, so he got out of sorts.
Exactly,
but he recovered.
Exactly, and that's the biggest difference with like I said, with Yule, he does okay. Not this season, but he's generally okay in MLS. But I think
no one's playing well for San Jose.
No, exactly. I can understand that as an Atlanta.
Yeah, we sympathize.
but I think he's comfortable in an MLS situation, and he plays fine. You bump him to the international stage, and he can't do it. I think it's a lot of nerves. I think it's lack of confidence. You can tell he's got a lack of confidence. If he's been able to hit passes in the MLS, long diagonals, but he can't do it in the U.S. shirt, what's the difference?
Yeah.
The stage. And I think he's nervous. And I think that's where Pines is different, right? If he's that nervous in a Gold Cup where it's clearly like, hey, this is our second, third string type players, and he still can't do it, knowing that, maybe he just can't do it. But I don't want to say he's terrible. but it's.
I don't think he's terrible. I also am not losing. I'm not going to spend. I don't want to spend too much more time dissecting Donovan Pines because unless he has to continue to play this Gold Cup, which I hope not, hopefully we can replace Zimmerman with someone else.
Are we going to continue to play in the back three? Because if we are, unless we call somebody else in, Buddy's playing, and that's the weird thing.
But my point is, I don't think Pines is I think he was brought in to just see if he could train well and that type of thing. I don't think he was brought in necessarily to be relied upon the way he was and the way he may have to be. Which I don't really, of all the roster build things that Berhalter screwed us over in this tournament, that's not the one that I'm mad at because I think we kind of wanted to see Donovan Pines anyway. Like he's been this guy in MLS. He's a young American.
Sure.
I'm okay with saying I'd like to see him. But I wasn't expecting for him to somehow make the jump to be in the core group of players going to World Cup qualifying, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So this is what I want to talk about, the Ewell Busio thing, because I think this match specifically, the U.S. had a lot of problems in the midfield, and it really came down to Canada was – It just was way too easy for Canada to pass around Busio, to dribble around Busio, to do anything in that around that midfielder who sat right in front of the back at this point 3/5, depending on mostly 5. What bothered me was that Busio. I think we all knew that Busio this would be a deficiency, right? Like no one's going, wow, that guy's a real ball winner in midfield. He's done better. I think he's better than most people give him credit for in MLS, but this is a little bit different. And Canada, again, they're the best team we've played so far in Gold Cup, and they're actually this group of players for Canada is pretty darn good. They're like an A- squad for them, right? They're missing some top end players, but for the most part, you're going to see these guys in World Cup qualifying. I think this is just the issue I have with Berhalter playing a regista, if you will, in that position against teams that have the capability to pass the ball and possess the ball and play with the ball in front of your defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty questionable. And then, you're talking about his defensive deficiencies. Like you said, he has gotten better. I think he was decent versus Martinique defensively. Versus Canada, I think defense. His defense is not his strength. Okay.
No, Busio's not known for his defending.
But it's not as poor as we saw versus Canada, and I think it's more because of the position he was asked to be or the position he was put in, and then also, I think there was a severe lack of energy in the team as a whole. You could see from the front two. You could see the three, Acosta, Leggett, and Busio. There were times where they get passed around on a little give and go, and they did not follow the runner, which is elementary, a soccer 101.
Right.
And they just let it go. And they're turning and watching, and it wasn't just Busio. And I think the pressing style in a 3 games in a week stretch played a part. I think the guys were tired. And then also the fact that the setup created so much space and stretched our guys out so far, and they were just worn out.
Yeah, I mean, Berhalter said in his post-game press conference that the team struggled. I think he added to those struggles, but I definitely think that the team struggled. It was hot, but Canada had to deal with that too. So that's kind of where I'm bothered by this. Is it's not like Canada was playing in somehow cooler temperatures than we were. But, you could tell that the team, Sands was cramping. Other players were, had to take some time to stretch themselves. It was definitely hot, and there was definitely, you could see that the conditions were taxing on the players. My question about this Canada game, well, actually, I want to go back to Ewell because I need to dump more onto this. My problem was that if the issue was Busio was getting beat a lot, both on the dribble and just passing wise, part of that was a formation issue. I think we both agree. Part of that is because that's just not Busio's strength.
Right.
So your solution was Jackson Ewell, who doesn't do any of those things. what we needed at that point in time, somewhere in the second half at like the 60th minute mark, what we needed was a player who could either take up space in the midfield, meaning a rangy player. I know he was tired, but I would have rather just moved Kellen Acosta to the 6 and have him run and break up play. Or you need a player who's going to bring more offensively, who can get a hold of the ball, actually possess it, and progress the ball upfield, because we were struggling to get out of our defensive half in possession. So neither of those things are Jackson Ewell's. And that's what bothered me. And it's not a Ewell's fault that he's not. I mean, it's not Ewell's fault that he got put in that position and looked predictably bad. Why was Berhalter putting Ewell in that position when that was not who we needed in the game?
I think, a few people alluded to it on Twitter that Berhalter seems to rely on experience too much. I talked about the fact that he puts too much stock into training performances. I've seen, as a coach myself, I've seen players that in training, they're standouts, and then you get into games and they can't do it, and then vice versa. You've got people that are terrible in training, and then all of a sudden they're in a game, and you're like, who is this?
Yeah.
And I think he's got to start looking into that a little bit more, and he'll be a little quicker on his leash, because we've talked about it before. He's got a long leash, and I get it. It's a tough spot as a coach. You've got these players, they're working hard, and you want to give them every opportunity to succeed. And you might think, okay, well, maybe they had a bad game. Let me give them another chance. But he's got to be able to look and make better decisions on these poor performances in competitive matches and say, okay, regardless of how hard he works, regardless of how good he is in the locker room, this guy's just not getting it done, and move on a little bit quicker. I'd be a lot happier.
Yep.
But I think I wrote in my notes where here's the thing. Berhalter, he's a smart guy, right? If we're all sitting here, all us Twitter keyboard warriors, and we're understanding that we're getting overrun in the midfield, Stu Holden's sitting there talking about it, calling it out, being in a 5-back line, sitting deep with 3 in the midfield, constantly getting overrun, not being able to win balls. And when we do win balls, there's no one to pick it up. There's no one to go forward. And we're constantly taking pressure from freaking Canada, right? He sees that, okay? He's not an idiot. So my question is this. If he understands that, he could easily make a change. He could go to a back 4 pretty quickly, right? You can take Sands, play him as the 6, Pines and Miles in the back, 2 center backs, then you have your left and right back. And it's not like these players don't know how to do it. We've done it before, okay? He could have done it. Push numbers up front.
You could have just made – I'm going to stop you because this is what I was wondering. Why not play the back 4, put Sands at the 6, and now you just push those other 2 center mids high, and you find just someone to play the wing. Because at this point, if you're just trying to defend a lead, your third winger now is a guy who's, in theory, supposed to be helping with the press so that DK and Zardes can press. You could have brought on Hoppy and played 3 up there. You could have even Roldan, just put him out at the right wing position. Be like, dude.
Play a tucked in winger, you had options. So this is my thought. Was he looking at either A, hey, this is a chance to see if we can bunker and close out a game, and so he wanted to try that? Or
for 90 minutes? Okay.
Right. Because we started losing that pressure at about 35 minutes.
Yeah. It was 50 to 60 minutes of 100%, us being 100% defensive.
An hour, absolutely, against Canada, which is stupid. But
we're not buying into the Matt Doyle, Andrew Wiebe hype of Canada. If you haven't figured that out, I think Canada's okay. I'm not buying them to be the next front runner. And
you had Jonathan David in the middle and Tajon Buchanan on the right and Alphonso Davies on the left, then okay, I understand maybe being a little bit afraid. But
especially this Canada team that didn't even have their better players in this tournament. Mark-Anthony Kaye wasn't playing. Kyle Larin wasn't playing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if he was just lacking confidence in the attack that he put out there because that's his fault. That's his choice to set up the team that way. Which
And
again,
if he didn't have players on the roster that he felt could solve the problem, also
exactly. Which again, his fault, right? But I don't know. But there was a clear, definitive decision on his part to play that low block, sitting in a back five with 3 players on an island because they can't sit there and press. They can't step and make any difference in midfield. Right. And it was on purpose. So then if you have any doubts about that, what's his first sub? Reggie Cannon, a defensive sub. Okay. What are his next 2 subs?
The Cannon sub made no sense to me unless it was scheduled. We're just going to get Shaq Moore out and get Reggie Cannon in, right? But at that point in time, you've already wasted a sub on Zimmerman. So now you only have 3 subs that can actually change the game.
They had started switching Tajon Buchanan, putting him on the left, or him cutting inside on his right foot. He was dangerous. So I think he was trying to get fresh legs on the right side, possibly, which again, defensive sub, right? Then he makes a sub for Yule. He puts in Roldan. He could have put in Eric Williamson. Why?
The game needed Eric Williamson. The game needed Eric Williamson.
And he chose Roldan on purpose because of experience. Guarantee you. There's no way that Berhalter thinks that Roldan's better than Eric Williamson. There's no way. But he chose it because of experience. I promise you. That's exactly
and what bothers me about this experience theorem of Berhalter's is that it's a self-predicting prophecy or a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I'm playing him because he has experience. So now that gives that player, quote, more experience while also taking away an opportunity for another player to get experience. Eric Williamson's 24 years old. He's not young. He's been playing in MLS for a couple of years. He's been playing, high-level soccer since he's been 18.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry he hasn't done it on the U.S. national team, but it's not like he's a 19. Like, Busio at 19, maybe a little bit, you go, I don't know if he can handle this. And that's fair, right? Williamson's 24, right? Like, how does he somehow not have the experience needed to close out a match like that?
Right. I don't understand it. I mean, there's so many things I would have done differently. When Zimmerman goes out, I'm not subbing Pines in. I'm going to a 2 center back system with.
I would have just had Sands.
Going to a back 4, drop Acosta to the 6, Busio and Leggett as your 2 8s, and then you push Zardes and DK up top. Zardes becomes a winger. Yeah. Zardes becomes a winger. And then who's your other?
You could have brought Hoppy on. You could have brought on either. You could have put Leggett. You could have put. I don't even hate the idea of you putting Roldan as a right winger if his job is to press, right? Like that's his main job. We could talk about the fact that we also don't have many wingers on this roster, which is again Berhalter's fault. But it just felt like he doesn't solve problems well in game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are talking about that, not necessarily dragging him, but bringing it up as a concern. His in-game adjustments when something goes away from his plan. I think he's good at planning, but then all of a sudden something changes and it's like, all right, you got to make an adjustment on the fly. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, that's probably the wrong decision. Yeah. And it's not something that has happened once. It's pretty much.
You mean like waiting for Diego Lainez to score a goal before taking Tim Ream off?
Oh my God. And that's the thing. He's not an idiot. And we're all sitting here. We're not professional coaches. And we're all sitting here going, you got to make that sub.
You can't have Tim Ream going up against Diego Lainez.
and then goal, and it's like, dude, come on. And I don't get it. You were saying something earlier about bringing Hoppy on. The Zardes DK 2-striker.
Good. That was my next point I wanted to talk about because I don't hate the idea of doing a 2-striker system. I don't hate it in general, right?
Especially the 3-5-2. I liked it. But
DK and Zardes are too similar of players, right? They're both guys who like to stretch the back line, and they're both guys who, I mean this, I'm not trying to drag them. Their first touch is not good. And this is something that legitimately Daryl DK does need to get better at if he wants to make it in Europe. Because not everyone's going to be Barnsley, and they're just going to hoof it up to him. He has to be better. And I'm very disappointed in that because I got to be honest, I haven't seen this level of bad touches from him before this. But both of them not being able to control the ball, both of them trying to want to make deep runs, we're somehow hoofing balls up to Zardes to win in the air. when you have Daryl DK right next to him. Maybe that's a Matt Turner not being able to hit a long ball. I don't know. But yeah, I don't hate the idea of the two-striker system. These were not the two to play.
Right. In a two-striker system, you cannot play the same two types of players. You just can't. You have to have that second striker who's going to play off of the holding striker, someone who is hopefully creative, good on the ball. It was screaming for a Hoppy Zardes or a Hoppy DK.
Right.
I think
the Martinique game, we looked really good with Hoppy and DK.
Yeah, I think it would have been a world of difference. And it's just it blows my mind that Berhalter doesn't make these changes. He doesn't implement these changes because there's no way he doesn't understand this stuff. There's no way.
And that's the frustrating part, is that Berhalter comes across as a very intelligent man, very perceptive, very, all these things that you want.
And the players love him.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, that's the thing is, like, the guys love playing for him, and I love that. But at the end of the day, dude, you're not making decisions that help us win games. And that's frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay. Last thing I have to talk about this game.
You're talking about a 3-game win streak, by the way, and we're so disappointed.
I know. Well, this is okay. So this is I said at the beginning that I want to pump the brakes on being super negative, because we have to remember that this is not our full strength squad.
Right.
No, this was not necessarily Canada's full strength squad either, but they are closer to the full strength than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you count like Sebastian Lletget as your full strength, which don't get me started on that. But this is my question. Was this a bad performance, or was this a B- USA squad playing a much fuller strength Canada squad, and maybe these players just aren't up to the level we need to be looking good against, legit CONCACAF competition? Or is it both?
I don't know. It might be both. I just had a thought. What if Berhalter's just playing chess, right? We're all playing checkers and he's playing chess, and he's looking at this and saying, I want to see what these young, somewhat inexperienced center backs and outside fullbacks, let me see what they can do. Let me see if they can protect a lead against a decent side. Thinking about the future, just seeing if they can do it, right? A bend not break type thing, and purposely putting them in that position. I don't know. Maybe that's giving him too much credit. I just keep thinking about the fact that this game did not suit any of the players that are possession style players, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Acosta looked bad. Buzio looked bad. Lletget looked bad. All these players looked bad.
Well, Lletget looked really bad this game. I do need to say that. He looked really bad.
He did, but they all looked bad. They had nothing. There was no connectivity at all. Even later on, when Hoppy came in making some amazing individual runs, there were moments where he had no choice but to do an individual run because he had no one around him. Some of it was system. Some of it was the fact that DK was out injured. A self, hurts his shoulder trying to go down, making it look like he got banged in the head. Anyways, I say that this game didn't look good for those players. But who did stand out in this game? Miles Robinson stood up, was a beast defender, shut down Tejan Buchanan several times.
He had a grown-ass man game.
Absolutely. Who else looked good? Who else looked good? Vines looked good. He made
I wouldn't say that. Vines
really
looked
nice plays.
Vines looked pretty solid this game. Okay? Yeah. Like, we have to say that he looked pretty solid this game.
Here's the thing.
He got beat a couple times, but he looked solid.
Is he transcendent? No. Is he confident on the ball? Yes. Can he play defense? Yes. To me, if we're going to play in a back four, he's my starting left back. Just because Anthony Robinson does not give me any.
He's more of a defensive left back. I agree with that. Now, if we're playing a 3-5-2 or anything, a variation of that, then Anthony Robinson all
absolutely.
Day.
He's my left wing back. But Vines showed me a lot, and like I said, again, maybe Berhalter was playing chess, and maybe he wanted to see that, to see if they could do that and stand up to the pressure and close out a game in a CONCACAF competition. Who knows? Maybe that's giving him too much credit.
So if you want to give him that much credit, then you can do that.
Just all these things going on in my head and realizing where we were looking poor and where we looked strong. And I'll tell you, I've been preaching it. I know you have. All of us Atlanta fans have been preaching it. Miles Robinson is a man, and he's the best 1v1 defender in the pool.
Period. That is not even. I'm not even being hyperbolic about that.
Someone tried to tell me CCV. Please miss me with that. It's Miles Robinson by a mile. CCV wishes he was as fast as Miles Robinson.
And I'm glad Miles stepped up and played better because I don't think he had a great first match against Haiti. But this was significantly better. And absolutely. I truly hope that Zimmerman is healthy enough to play. I don't know if that's going to be possible.
God, I hope so.
And we may know that by the time this podcast even drops. But I hope he's healthy enough to play because the Zimmerman-Robinson pairing has been pretty good. I thought the first game was a little wacky, but I think we've got it figured out. So hoping that can happen. And I really like the three back with Zimmerman, Robinson, and Sands. I thought that was really good.
Very strong. And Sands, you talk about someone who's raised their stock. Coming into
this we will have a whole segment on stock up and down. I promise.
Okay.
So that's look, again, you said it. We won 3 games in a row in the Gold Cup. We haven't lost a match in 6 matches. We lost to Switzerland in that friendly before the Nations League, but we're 3-0 in this Gold Cup. We've beaten 6 CONCACAF teams in a row since losing to Switzerland, and 4 of those have been teams that we're going to face in the octagonal, whether they're the full strength squad or not. There's some variation of a team we're going to see in the octagonal, and we've won. Win the group, 9 points. Only concede the 1 play goal, not even from open play. Early goals, love to see that. That's the thing that I have to say is my favorite thing I saw from this group stage. What was your favorite thing you saw from the group stage from a just holistic standpoint?
My favorite thing is the fact that I think Berhalter has made some changes in his depth charts.
Jonathan Lewis is off of it.
Jonathan Lewis, Jackson Ewell, I think has dropped. I think he's finally made some changes, and I think if nothing else, if we come out of this tournament and we're not relying on Jackson Ewell as our backup 6 if Tyler Adams can't go, because I'm telling you, before this Gold Cup, Acosta may have jumped Ewell.
Yeah.
But Ewell was still 2 or 3 if Tyler Adams couldn't go. And so if nothing else comes from this, I think Berhalter knows that that's not the case. And he's looking elsewhere now.
That's honestly the most disappointing thing from this group stage that I had is I didn't see Acosta at a true 6 position. And I do think that Acosta is the best replacement right now for Tyler Adams. I'm not saying as the 6. I'm just saying if you need a guy to mimic as best as possible what Tyler Adams can do, I think Acosta is the best player for that. And that's why I was even confused that he didn't start at the 6. I'm glad Busio played and started. I'm glad he's getting more time, but you could have played Busio at an 8 and Acosta at the 6, and I think that would have worked better.
Based on what I saw last night, I'd rather see Busio at the 8 instead of the 6, just because he lacks that killer instinct of I'm going to stick you. I don't care how hard I tackle you.
Yeah.
Like he's not that kind of guy. Not saying that he's a bad player. Obviously, I really like the kid. He's got a super high ceiling. I don't know if I want him at the 6. I'd rather have him at the 8.
Yeah, and that's fair. But yeah, no, again, 3 wins, 3 matches, only 1 goal conceded. You scored 8. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to individual players. We talked a lot about them, but let's do the stock up and down. Okay, I want you to give me 3 players that you have stock up for.
In order or just off the top of my head?
You can do it in order, but off the top of your head is fine.
I think Sands right off the bat. I maybe call me a homer. I don't care. Miles Robinson has improved his stock. And then before his injury, I think Zimmerman. It's easy to say Busio, right? Everybody saw that or wanted to see that rather. I think that's a cop-out call, maybe. I'm trying to think a little bit outside the box.
I like your 3. You said Sands, Robinson, and Zimmerman. Those are the 3 center backs.
I think they have really proven themselves.
Yeah. And I think it's notable that Sands kind of basically played the 6th position in that Canada match, right? That was a weird, he stepped into that midfield whenever Busio went up. Not weird, but that was the wrinkle. And hey, that's something to look for going forward.
You can clearly see his quality in possession, on the ball, his confidence making turns. He's really good at that little like fake step, getting the defender to cut one way, and then all of a sudden he cuts back and he's driving forward as a center back. That translates very well to the 6. So even if he's not playing a true quote unquote 6, you can see the qualities to do that.
Well, okay, so you're at 3 up were Zimmerman, Sands, and Robinson. Mine are Williamson. Mm-hmm. I also said Zimmerman and Hoppy. And so I think Williamson, I'm mad we haven't seen more of him because I want to see more, because I think what we saw, it's not perfect, and I'm okay with that. But what I see is more positives that can help this team and can help the team that we're looking at for World Cup qualifying. Because, I think our midfield trio, our starting trio, is fairly set in some regard, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Adams, McKinney, Musa, maybe Leggett, maybe Reyna, depending on how you want to play it. But it's set, and I don't think he's there. But if he's a guy you bring off the bench, and this is where I think he's really good, he progresses the ball upfield. He's looking to turn and go forward. He can beat people on the dribble. I like that. And I think we're going to need that when CONCACAF comes and teams are going to bunker against us. Or teams are going to press us, and he has the composure to dribble out of the press. Because you can't always pass your way out of the press.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to take someone on and dribble past them. So that's why I think Williamson is stack up for me. Zimmerman, I think for the same reasons as you. I don't think he's my starting center back, but I'll say that if Chris Richards isn't ready to go come September 2nd, I'm not going to be freaked out by Walker Zimmerman having to start. I think he's the most logical replacement, if you will, of Aaron Long, because I think they're very similar players. And I still think that, I know everyone loves Chris Richards, and I love him too. I think he's got a bright future for the U.S. men's national team, but I still think that up until Long was hurt, he was going to be the starting right center back in Nations League. So I think Zimmerman definitely has increased his stock to the point where I go, he's probably in your 23-man roster for a game day. He may start a couple of World Cup qualifiers, and I don't think that'll be a problem.
And I also, something with Zimmerman, he's better in the air than Long. He's better in the air than a lot of our center backs. And he's extremely dangerous on set pieces.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. We're going to score some goals on set pieces in CONCACAF, and I am here for that because you look at McKinney. Yeah. So, I'm here for center backs who can cause havoc on set pieces.
The reason I didn't go Williamson and Hoppy, because I really like what I've seen, especially from Hoppy.
Oh yeah, Hoppy has.
He's a bigger dude than I realized. He's a lot taller than I realized. I didn't realize that.
He's like a gazelle out there.
He's extremely good with his feet for I think he's what 6'2", 6'3", something.
He's had a couple of touches that are bad, but for the most part, he's been really good once he's settled the ball.
He's got quality,
which is more than I can say for some other strikers we have.
Here's the reason I didn't go stock up with them, because I kind of looked at it from Berhalter's perspective. Fair. And the fact that Williamson didn't start and was not used, to me, shows Berhalter still not fully rating him there. And then Hoppy.
I'm rolling my eyes at Berhalter, not you.
Exactly. Oh, no. I'm just saying this way. I think with Sands, Miles, and Zimmerman, they're clearly like in Berhalter's picture. So I'm trying to look at it from his perspective. And like I said, with Williamson and Hoppy, for whatever reason, and again, maybe it's because he's putting too much stock into training and maybe they don't train that well. I don't know. But in the games, you can see their quality and their ability on the ball. And there's so many times where you need players like that. I don't care if they can't do exactly what you're asking them to do in training. Look at them in the game. Look at them on the actual stage and how are they performing.
Yeah. Here's my question about Hoppy, and this is why I put him out there. Do we have a striker yet?
Again, looking at it from Berhalter's perspective, yes, I think it's Sargent.
I agree. I'm not saying Sargent, but we've just been wanting someone to go score goals as a striker. And I know DK's done it this tournament, but
You want to talk about people losing their minds and being like, I saw someone say, like, that's what the striker's supposed to do because DK scored 2. And it's like, dude, it's Martinique. I guarantee you Sargent's bagging the same goals versus Martinique.
I mean, I have, like, let's be real honest. The goals that DK scored were good.
Look what Sargent did in the preseason game last week. Yeah. He scored a hat trick in like 20 minutes. The guy can score goals. He can finish, but not when he's sitting there playing on a terrible team that doesn't create chances. No one's going to score. I don't care who it is. I've already said, Lewandowski can go sit there and play for Werder Bremen, and he's only bagging 10 goals.
Yeah, they're not going to score that many.
Right.
That's where I put Hoppy stock up because I feel like
he's up for me.
I just feel like I know, and even in a Berhalter's mind, I have to go, look, I mean, I look at it and say he's showed really well. He's shown versatility, and we don't have a striker that makes me feel super confident yet. Maybe Hoppy could be it. I don't know. I'm not saying he is, but it's just like we don't have anyone right now that I'm like, yeah, that's our guy. And so is what?
Do you think he gets a transfer this summer? Or this?
I don't know if he needs one. I mean that sincerely. I don't think it's the worst thing.
In the Bundy too?
I don't think it's the worst thing if he's in the second Bundesliga scoring goals.
Yeah.
But I would like for all of our players to be playing at a top level club. So in that sense, yes, I'd like to see him get a transfer. But I'm not gonna be mad if he has to stay in the second Bundesliga because, I think playing at that level might be helpful so he can score goals and be more confident. I feel the same way about Josh Sargent, where I'd like for him to get a transfer, but maybe a season at the second Bundesliga where he's scoring goals is good. All right, so that's stack up and stack down. This is my next question, and after this, we'll move on to more happy things. Talk about the U.S. Women's National Team. So this is the question I have, and this is probably putting you on the spot, but I don't. I'm sorry. Okay, so I think we've said this a couple times. There's like a two-pronged goals for this tournament. Number one, I think, is still to win, right? And I've said it has to at least be make the final because the U.S. should always make the final. But the secondary goal, or goal 1A, depending on how you look at it, is to increase the player pool for World Cup qualifying, right? So my question here is, of this 23-man roster here, who on this roster do you think will feature in World Cup qualifying? And I don't mean like have to get a start because someone, or like get called up because like there's injuries. I mean, like, who do you think will actually feature? Meaning they'll be on match day squads regularly. They might play regularly. Who do you think those players might be? And I mean the whole squad. So
Do you mean this specific little September window that's coming up, or just
I'm looking at World Cup qualifying as a whole?
Okay,
but yeah,
because that changes my answer because U.S. Keeper on Twitter maybe a month ago came out and said that in the last cycle, like I think 40 players were used in World Cup qualifying because of fixture congestion, injuries.
And I think that will be much higher this time around.
So, yeah, okay, exactly. So I think there's going to be a lot of players used in World Cup qualifying. That said, from this specific roster, I think the chances of probably 6, 7 guys have a real possibility of having some part of World Cup qualifying.
I have a list, so go with me on this. And they're kind of put in order, if you will,
of confidence.
Of confidence that I think they will feature well.
Okay,
let's put it that way.
All right.
Okay, so I have Sebastian Lletget.
100%.
Helen Acosta. Matt Turner. I think he'll be your third string goalkeeper.
He's at least your third. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Walker Zimmerman, I think, has really shown that if you need a center back from MLS, he's the guy.
He has an extremely high possibility of making it, especially depending on injuries, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're going to take, 3-4 center backs?
You might take 4 per – if you have at least 2 backups for each one. So that's at least 4 center backs for a 23-man squad, let alone if you just have a bigger squad for the window. So, Zimmerman, I think there.
Absolutely.
5th, it's not like a ranking, but I'm just kind of putting them in order of how I feel like, Reggie Cannon.
Yeah.
He might even be higher, but
he's probably
I
the
think
starting right back if you play best on the left.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing about it is we're going to have a lot of right backs, and I think that's a good thing.
Speaking of right backs more, we didn't talk about him, talk about raising stock. He's put himself in the conversation.
He's on my list.
Into the deepest lineup.
Especially he's at Real Betis.
Deepest position. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Cannon at 5. 6 is DK. And I put him this far down because, again, I think we're all really high on Daryl DK because he's big and he's fast and he's physical and he scores a lot of goals in league play. He just hasn't looked that good in MLS, in a U.S. shirt. Yeah. His 2 best performances, inarguably, Costa Rica, they were terrible, and Martinique, which is also not a good team. So I just want, we want DK to be this thing that he's not quite yet.
Yeah.
But DK is on number 6. Number 7, Zardes. Look, Berhalter loves the guy.
He does.
Number 8, Areola. I think he'll be on some rosters.
If he's healthy, he's got a lot of versatility.
Right. The guy works hard. You know what you're getting from Areola. It's the only bad part of Areola's game is the final ball. The final product is usually not as great.
Yeah.
Everything else about his game is pretty darn okay.
Yeah.
Number 9.
And we're talking about Berhalter.
Yes, we are talking about Berhalter.
His perspective.
Yeah.
His perspective.
A lot of coaches love Paul Areola because he hustles and he plays hard. And that's fine. Number 9, Sam Vines. Again, I don't know what the left back situation is.
Left back right now.
He might be higher up that list just because who knows, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm not sold on him as like a great left back, but hey, he might be moving to Belgium soon, and that would be really good for his game too.
Right back is as deep as the ocean right now. Left back.
Oh my gosh, left back, who knows?
Left back is a puddle. If we're talking about depth.
Yeah. And that's the only reason why I think that the left back, it makes more sense to put Dest out there just because you have more options on the right side. But anyway.
Exactly.
So that's Vines at 9. Number 10, James Sands. I definitely think he has shown that he can play center back, the 6, something, and that versatility is useful. 11, Shaq Moore. I know the right back field is pretty strong, but he has shown very well. Granted, against not great teams, but he's shown well. And I think he plays a position the way that Berhalter likes, so that is beneficial to him. And then the last one, and I hate to say this, I put a little barf emoji next to his name on my notes.
Don't say it.
Christian Roldan. Not Yule.
I thought you were going to say Yule.
Yule, I think it's easier to say who is not being factored into World Cup qualifying off this roster. And if I had to get out. Yeah, I think that Yule and Lewis have absolutely played themselves out.
Yeah.
I think Pines was never in the discussion to begin with, but I don't think he's being considered. Unfortunately, I just don't think, to your point, I don't think Williamson is in that discussion yet. I'd like to see him play more in these knockout stages and show more, but it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's my list of 12 guys that I think from this roster, will play a lot in World Cup or feature a lot in World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we said, there's going to be a lot of guys that are playing, and a lot of these guys right now are taking advantage of the situation they're in, taking advantage of the opportunity they've been given, and they are stepping up. Some, like we just said, Yule, he's played himself out.
I think Lewis more than Yule because Lewis got the start the first game, and we have not seen him since.
Oh, yeah, and honestly, probably won't see him again.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and that's
he might not be a good player.
I don't understand. Of all the people called, he's the one with the biggest question mark because and again, this is from Berhalter's.
It was experience.
Right? Well, but here's the deal.
And that's what pisses me off, man.
Berhalter puts so much stock in playing first team minutes, right? Of all the players on this roster, Lewis is getting the least amount. The guy's not even starting for Colorado.
He's played for Berhalter in this system before with the U.S. national team, so that means something apparently.
But I think a lot of guys, to your point, there's going to be a lot of guys from this roster.
Right, and for everyone who's going to be like, oh, what do you mean about that? I'm like, guys, you're going to – I am not joking when I say I think we will have 30 players called up for a window.
Oh, yeah.
You only have to have 23 set for the matchday squad. I think we will have at least 30 players because you just need them to be traveling with you. And I'll I'm sorry that I'm saying this, people. A lot of those players are going to be MLS based because when you have a 3-game window and they have to be here, you play on a Sunday and they have to be ready to play again on a Thursday night. You'd rather have players who are already on this continent than having to fly them back and forth. And I'm sorry, but that just is the reality of the situation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a great point. You got to count on those guys to get it done. It's like Olympic qualifying, right? The players that you would take to the Olympics versus the players that are in Olympic qualifying are usually not the same.
Right.
It's going to be the same thing. There's going to be a lot of times where in World Cup qualifying, you're going to be relying on a quote-unquote MLS heavy roster. But a lot of these guys are showing that they can get it done. And to your point with DK, no, he's not exactly what we want him to be, but he is someone where when you go down to
El Salvador now looks like a tough one.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. They're playing really well. And if you go down there and the grass is 6 inches high and you're not going to play pretty soccer and you're not going to be disorganizing anybody with the ball down there, you need someone who you can lump the ball and play ugly soccer, and he's going to get his head on it. He's going to bully somebody. He's going to blow past somebody because he has that ability. And I think absolutely he's going to play a big part.
Yeah. So again, I think that you just have to understand that a lot of the call-ups that Berhalter is going to make are going to be MLS guys because it just makes sense. If you're not sure you're going to use a guy, and I like Eric Palmer Brown, I really do. I like what he has to offer. But if you're not sure you're going to use that guy as your third or fourth center back, why call Eric Palmer Brown for 7 days, 8 days when you could just have Miles Robinson come, who is right here. Now, granted, Miles Robinson could be in Europe by the time that we start World Cup qualifying. Please don't sell him. We do need him here in Atlanta still. Bello, fine, but Miles, keep him here, please. At least through the end of the season. But the point is, logistics sometimes play into this. So anyway, the final topic on CONCACAF Gold Cup before moving to Olympics. Caleb has been nice enough. He's going to talk about the Olympics with me, which is going to be great. We need to talk about this CONCACAF mid-tournament rule change. We're told at the beginning no additions or subtractions to the roster, but now they're saying, okay, yes, you can for the knockout round make changes to your roster by substituting a player that was on your preliminary roster into this roster for medical reasons, meaning COVID or injury. Now, personally, I love this and think that more tournaments should do this personally. But this offers an opportunity for the U.S. Now, the players who we know have been injured in this tournament, right? Paul Arriola, Daryl Dike picked up an injury in the Canada game. We're not quite sure.
Right.
Walker Zimmerman, which looks probably worse than Arriola. We're not sure, but Walker Zimmerman. And then Reggie Cannon was not quite fit to start the tournament. He did play 30 minutes against Canada, but really you're looking at Arriola and Zimmerman, and then maybe DK, maybe Cannon. So let's start with Zimmerman because I think he's the one that we're not sure about the most, and honestly, it didn't look good. Hopefully it's fine. Hopefully it's, it wasn't great. The center backs that you can call up: Cameron Carter-Vickers, Justin Shea, Henry Kessler, Eric Palmer Brown, Austin Trusty. All of those players were listed on the preliminary roster. Were not called in for the final 23-man roster. Who's your ideal replacement? Who's the one that you think is most likely?
So it depends on what Berhalter wants to do. And I mean that by saying if he wants to continue the tournament in a back four, then maybe you keep it the same because you have 3 center backs. And you call it an attacker. But if he wants to continue with the back 3, which I think he probably will, it's probably going to be Henry Kessler. He's played well in MLS. He played well in Olympic qualifying fairly well.
He was the least problematic center back in World Cup or in Olympic qualifying.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he probably makes the most sense. Yeah. And you slot him probably on the left. Miles Robinson goes to right center back, and Sands is your center back.
I think that Kessler makes the most sense. The one who I would love would be, I'd love to see Cameron Carter-Vickers, but I just don't think that Vickers or CCV or EPB come in because they're in Europe training. I just don't think that's happening.
Same.
And everyone loves Justin Shea. not at all trying to say anything negative about the kid, but I'm sorry. He's 18 and he hasn't shown me that he is ready to start playing in a CONCACAF Gold Cup right now. Because this player, in my opinion, would have to be brought in to play.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Like, this player is going to be a guy that you know is going to be able to start. Yeah. And so that, again, is why Kessler is important, because I think the familiarity with the system in this point is a positive, you know? Yeah. Okay, so that's the center back. The next one is probably and I don't want to talk about right backs because we have 17 of them. So if Cannon can't play, then we'll just pick another right back.
Yeah, sure.
Like 72. They grow on.
Reach in the bag.
Yeah. Forwards. Now, again, we mentioned DK. I'm not sure. You know, he still played. It looked like he was in pain, but I'm not quite sure what happened. Mm-hmm. Paul Arriola, a winger, definitely is the one that I'm more concerned with. But let's look at the forwards on this roster. You have Josie Altidore, Frankie Amaya, Corey Baird, Cade Cowell, Jeremy Abobise. I always screw up his name. Jeremy Abobise, sorry. Mm-hmm. Jesus Ferreira, Chris Mueller, Ricardo Pepe, Robbie Robinson, and Mason Toy. Who would you bring in to replace Arriola?
Yeah.
Who would you bring in?
If I'm replacing Arriola, I really want to bring in Chris Mueller. I'd have brought Chris Mueller from the beginning. Apparently, I heard reports or people talking about how maybe he came in with a bad attitude, or maybe he was too cocky or whatever, and that's Berhalter left him out because of that. Other than that, I have no idea why he wasn't brought. He played well in December, in the little December friendlies we had. He plays well for Orlando. The kid has got grit. He's got some technical ability. And, I mean, he's a threat. And you want to talk about someone who could have helped against Canada? Chris Mueller. So he's probably the one I'd call in for Arriola. And if DK has to be switched out, which I don't think he will. It was his shoulder.
I don't think he will. And he played.
Yeah,
if it were a collarbone injury, he wouldn't have played, right?
Well, maybe if it was like a slight dislocation or something, and they put it back in, it's really sore, but it's not going to keep him from playing. So I don't think we have to make a change there. But if we do, that's a tough one. Do you want to bring in another center forward because you have Nico already?
You already have Gioacchini. You already have Hoppy. And you have
exactly.
So three center forwards.
I think you probably try and go get another winger if it's me.
I kind of agree.
You said Robbie Robinson, right? The kid from Miami.
The kid from Miami.
He intrigues me a little just to see what he has. I don't know. I don't want to bring in a center forward, but Jeremy Abobise can play center forward, but he can also play winger, and he knows the system. So maybe that's
the guy that I bring in because he can play center forward if you need it. He can play left wing if you need it.
That's an easy plug-in there.
Right. And I think that he fills a lot of the things that you need the left winger to do. He can both be a get up the field guy, but he can also be creative with the ball in his feet. So I think if you're replacing – honestly, I wouldn't mind if you bring him in to replace Arriola, but I'm with you. I would bring in Mueller for sure to replace Paul Arriola if he can't go. Yeah. And again, why wasn't Mueller on this roster to begin with?
DK connection.
We don't know. That would have been nice. I don't know.
Yeah. What do we know?
Clearly not as much as Greg Berhalter. All right, so that is CONCACAF Gold Cup Group B recap. Again, the U.S. won 3 games in a row. They won the group with 9 points, 1 goal conceded, 8 goals scored. They are on to the quarterfinals of a play Sunday, July 25th at 9:30 p.m. That is the reported start time. It will not start at 9:30 p.m. It'll start closer to 10 if we are lucky. On a Sunday night because they needed to schedule it that late for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, that game will be in Arlington. We know that for sure. That'll be in Arlington. We don't know where the semifinal is yet. Thanks, CONCACAF.
When do we find out who we're playing? Has that been?
We will find out that who we play. We are recording on Tuesday night. We will find that out as we're recording because it will be the whoever does not win the Costa Rica and Jamaica match.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So 2 tough opponents. I would prefer to play Costa Rica right now, which sounds weird to say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does.
But I would much rather play Costa Rica at this point in time.
Whoever we face, I just want to see a not so frustrating is the word I'm going to use lineup.
Fair. All right, so that is the Gold Cup. Let's switch gears and talk about the women's national team at the Olympics. They play on Wednesday at 4:30 a.m. against Sweden. Then they play Saturday, 7:30 a.m. against New Zealand. And then next Tuesday against Australia at 4 a.m. Now, I think that this is this is very important for Vlatko Andonovski to make the Olympic final. Because he took some risks with some of the players he chose.
Mm-hmm.
We got knocked out in the quarterfinals last time around. I think he needs to kind of do well in this tournament to prove that, hey, the U.S. is still here, and to prove that his system of playing with the U.S. is still here. I don't think that, I'm not calling into question this. I do think that this team should be making a final, or at least the semifinals. But what are your overall thoughts about the U.S. women's national team heading into this Olympic tournament? 2 years removed from the World Cup that we won in 2019. No one has done the back-to-back, but no one's had a break. So maybe that helps.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this a little bit on Twitter. It's an aged group for sure.
Luckily, the replacements they were able, the alternates that are now part of the full roster did drop the age down a little bit.
So I was going to talk about the fact that that's a big thing for me. The fact that the alternates are now available to be selected to the game day 18. The team is aged for sure. I think the average age is 31?
It was more than 32 before these. I haven't done the math since then, but I think it's still over 30.
Yeah, exactly. But I think one of the reasons why it's so weird for us is because it's the exact opposite from the men's, right? The men's is so young.
Yeah.
And the women right now, you've got Carly, which, I mean, God bless her. She's still plugging along. And I'm not going to hate on her.
Don't worry. I'll do that enough.
Okay. I'll let you do that. She works extremely hard. I was extremely frustrated when the alternates were just regular alternates and they weren't going to be able to be selected. And she was chosen instead of Kat Macario. That one, 100%. We talk about Berhalter and his, affinity for experience. That the only explanation for Carly over Macario was experience.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been her.
Not club play.
No, there's no way. So that being said, the age doesn't bother me too much because most of them are still playing very high level.
Yeah, and the one that I was most concerned with was Tobin Heath, and she came out in that send-off series and proved me wrong. And I'm very, I have to say, I'm very happy with that.
Tobin's my favorite player.
I love her. I've loved her since she played for the Atlanta Beat, which I have the scarf hanging over there from that. But I was concerned. I'm glad she is fine.
As you should have been, because we hadn't seen her. And
she hadn't played since December.
And she was joking the whole time, clearly, because she stepped on the field and
it was
the beat. I mean,
good Lord.
She's so good. And then the only thing that worries me is how healthy Julie Ertz is.
Yep.
So
I don't think we make the final without a healthy Julie Ertz. I think Lindsey Horan is a very good player. Mm-hmm. I think she can play that position okay. But the thing about the Olympics is that you don't have – I mean, this group that we have is tough. We've got Australia, New Zealand, Sweden. Those are 3 top 20, top 15 teams. You don't have a gimme in the knockout round because you only have you have quarterfinals, semis, and finals. So, you're playing one of the other really good teams. Because there's only 16 teams in the tournament, it's not like you have, or not 16. Yeah, because you have so few teams in the tournament, it's not like you have a lot of gimme games. So
yeah,
we definitely needed a healthy Julie Ertz.
One of my biggest complaints with this last year or so with Vlatko is he had so many opportunities to play different to play different players.
There's 12 teams. I just want to correct myself there. I knew it was 12
12?
teams. Yeah, I knew it was 12 teams. Because there's 3 groups of 4. I don't know why I can't do math. I apologize.
It's okay. But you know what? It's late.
It's the 3 top teams and then 2, the top 2 of each group and then 2 of the third place teams. Anyway.
Hey, I like it. But I think my biggest complaint with him has been the fact that he's wasted opportunities to find depth at the 6. Yes,
he didn't even play Andy Sullivan, really.
No, I know, and that's the thing. And honestly, it's a possibility. I'm not going to blame it on him, but the fact that Ertz got hurt maybe is the fact that she played like 13 games in a row without rest, full 90s. There's and some of those were friendlies.
Yeah.
Why
would
you not take that opportunity to play like a Jalen Howell or an Andy Sullivan or Emily Sonnet apparently can play the 6. Try her. But give Ertz a rest. I mean, you ran her into the ground. So it's a little bit of a gripe for the most part.
No, it's a fair point because I think that's something that I criticized Jill Ellis for.
Yeah.
Is, you didn't really – especially when it came to the Hope Solo transition, and I get why that happened, but that wasn't Ellis, that was Steinhagen. But we've had a problem of not trying to find new blood until we have to find new blood.
You have to, yes, exactly.
And with as many matches as the U.S. Women's National Team plays in a season,
thank you. In the women's game,
have time.
They're playing so many games. There's no reason you can't, and that's my biggest thing with the keeper position. Ugh. Why? Yeah. We saw. Why didn't Jane Campbell get a run out? We saw.
AD Francis had a really good season in NWSL. Portland.
We saw her one time,
but
we saw her one time against poor opposition, and you know you're not going to get to see her do anything.
Yeah.
Why you know who Nair is? Why not give Franch or Campbell a shot? Sorry, I just got frustrated.
I know. I'm with you. Okay, so I think overall this roster, like you said, is aging, but like no one on this roster is anywhere bad. The beauty of the U.S. Women's National Team is there's not a bad choice there's not a bad choice for a lineup. And luckily, most of those controversial choices fix themselves because the IOC allowed us to take all 22 players and put them on the full roster. You just have to have 18 for the match day squad. And I'm happy with that. All right. So again, we play Sweden first, a very tough team, top 5 in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then you play New Zealand. Then you play Australia. Now I was looking at New Zealand and Australia. I'm not that concerned, especially Australia. They've been like weirdly inconsistent. They've given up a lot of goals recently. New Zealand is more defensively sound, but Sweden's the team that I'm most concerned with. And 18, yes, yeah, that too. We always play them in the tournaments, but. From that game we played back in April, 9 of their starters returned for this tournament, and 9 of their substitutes who were listed on the matchday roster that didn't start also returned. So that's 18 players from that 23-player roster from back in April. And they were missing a couple of their players, but it's going to be very similar to what we saw in April. And in fact, some of the players are actually an improvement that they have here. That was the only match that we've played in recent memory since at least the 2019 World Cup, and certainly since the semifinal of the 2019 World Cup against England, where the U.S. looked like not the better team.
Yeah.
Now, part of me says, y'all, this has just been a weird thing. Who knows? Like, it was a weird training schedule. They were in between Challenge Cup and they hadn't really started yet. Now they're going into April or going over to Europe to play in April, and there's COVID and all these things. So I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in like, oh, Sweden's better than us. But Sweden's darn good. And I think it's very important that we come out and at least get a point in this match.
Yeah. I think the U.S. women, they're like the France men's team. You know, what do they say? The second choice 11 is still like a top 5. Yeah,
France is incredibly deep. Probably the deepest in the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so and the women's like that as well. There's so much talent. but is it something where they're going to go in and be overconfident? Like, it's kind of like the last Olympic cycle, right? Losing Sweden.
Yeah.
It was like they bunkered, they shut us out, and there were zero answers.
Yeah.
It was like, well, this isn't how it's supposed to go. This is not right. I mean, this is, and it was like, okay, you can sit there and say that it's not going to plan all you want. Do you have a different plan?
And that's where I actually think Vlatko is a much better tactician.
Exactly.
And I think plan A for us is more suited to play against a bunkering team, first off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we have plan B. So
versus what we used to be, for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
No, I agree.
Better to play against that bunker. And I think we've seen it, especially.
Sweden doesn't. Sweden doesn't bunker. I don't want to say that. Like,
no,
Sweden
of course
is a very defensively organized team, but they're not bunkering. There's a difference.
Right. Well, you know what I mean. Like when
New Zealand will bunker.
It's like what we talked about with Berhalter, right? He's good at a plan, and then once that plan goes awry, can he make an adjustment? And he has struggled to do so. But like you said, Vlatko has seemed to be much better at that, and we've seen it in some of the friendlies, some of these little tournaments that we've had, where you'll see. I think Haran dropped back to play left back and pushed Crystal Dunn forward because he knew, okay, they have a weakness here. We can exploit it, and we've got the players on the field to do it. Let me just switch things up a little bit. Made the changes, and that's something that I think he's a lot better at than Jill Ellis.
Right. I mean, Jill Ellis was a two-time World Cup winning coach. I can't rag on her for too much, but her tactics always frustrated me.
Yes,
I think Vlatko, from a tactician standpoint, is a much more astute coach than that. And I think the system that he's implemented is just much more set up for consistent success. But yeah, the Sweden match does concern me because, again, I that's the first time in 2 years that we had seen the U.S. women not look like the better team.
Yeah.
And again, it hadn't been that way since the semifinal when England probably should have beat us, but we got a little lucky. And, it is definitely going to be a test. But I think that with 3 teams potentially getting out of the group, and definitely your top 2 getting out, I'm more just get a result because I expect us to beat New Zealand and Australia. It just comes to a matter of how many goals can you score.
Yep.
So just get a result from this first game and then get what you can and then dominate in New Zealand and Australia. That's the way I look at this tournament.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right. So the big question for me about this to you is, who do you think needs to be the most important player on the U.S. women's national team for us to be successful in this tournament?
That is a fantastic question. And it could go so many different ways. I think Alex Morgan's going to have a big tournament. She looks healthy. I mean, she does. There's a lot of questions with her coming back. Is she going to be fit enough? Especially with the congested schedules and the smaller roster size, but the fact that there's alternates, right? It's going to help a little bit. But I think she's going to have a big. I think she's going to have a big tournament. We're going to count on her to do what she's always done: put the ball in the back of the net. I don't need her doing anything like hero type play. Just be in the right place at the right time, just like she's always done. So I guess the question is, can she get back to the form that she was in?
I think she can.
I think she can too.
And I think honestly, she has the best relationship in terms of on the field with like Kristen Press and Tobin Heath, and I assume those will be the starters with her. And I'm with you. Like, if Alex Morgan is playing the hold up Alex Morgan, but also the line pushing Alex Morgan, we're going to score some goals.
Also just a clinical finisher, right? When she gets the chances, she's put like she had a fantastic World Cup. because she finished
Yep.
very well. And then here's my thing. If Tobin's going to play the right wing, Morgan plays in the middle, I'm really hoping Kristen Press starts at left wing and not Rapinoe. Not because I don't like Rapinoe.
No, I think Kristen Press
Press is on fire. Press is probably
she's the best player right now on the U.S. women's national team.
She's in the best form of any player on the women's roster. And also, I think Rapinoe off the bench gives you so much versatility because she could play any of the front three spots. And if you needed her to, she could play an attacking mid position as well. So
her technical ability is useful off the bench.
Absolutely. And she's got all that experience. So I'd rather her be off the bench anyways. So I'd say, to answer the question, I'd say it's probably Morgan. And then if let's say Ertz can't go, then
so that's my answer.
Okay. So I say Ertz has to have a good one. If she can't go, then Horan has to have the best tournament of her life.
That's how I look at this, is because I don't know the status of Julia Ertz. She didn't play at all during the Cernoff series. She wasn't even on the bench. Horan, if Lindsay Ertz is not healthy, it has to be Horan because she has to be super impactful. Like really darn good. So I'm with you and Alex Morgan from if we're all at full strength, hopefully it's because she can be so important to unlocking defenses. But if Ertz isn't healthy, then it has to be Lindsay Horan. And Lindsay Horan was super influential in the 2019 World Cup in ways that a lot of people didn't really see, Like, you look at Rose Lavelle and how great she was, which she was, but Lindsay Horan was pretty darn good in that tournament too.
Absolutely. And she provides a ton of versatility as well. She can play both eights. She can play the six. She can play left back. She can play center back. I love Lindsay Horan. Yeah. I think she's better on the ball than Julia Ertz. She's a better passer than Julia Ertz. Yeah. But what she doesn't do as well, she doesn't read the game the way Ertz does.
From the defense,
Oh my gosh, the way that she reads the game and makes stops before anything can happen is second to none. So
a little
going to do that.
Yeah, I think so. For me, a little bit of it is just not sure where Ertz's health is. And because if it's not, then Ertz will play, and I'm sure she'll do fine. But even then, I still think Horan is going to have to be important. Probably giving her, Ertz a spell or two. I could see Horan starting that New Zealand game anyway, and maybe the Australia game anyway as the six, just because I don't think we're going to have to need Ertz in the same way.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you know you're going to be on the front foot, go ahead and give Ertz a rest. There's no reason to sit here and run her 90 minutes every single game. Because
Horan, Mewis, and Lavelle are going to be a perfectly okay midfield defensively. Like Mewis and Horan can hold the fort down defensively.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm excited for this because I think that the U.S. can be the first team to legitimately go and do a World Cup win and a gold medal. I think the year off helps. Trivia question for you. See if you can take a guess. Okay. Outside of the countries of these teams, so that's USA, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, in which country do these players play professionally the most? So their club team, not USA, Sweden, New Zealand. Which country is represented most on these rosters in Group?
All four rosters?
And these four rosters of Group G.
Is it England?
It is England. Yeah, they're actually the second most players playing club in England. 23 play in the U.S. A lot of that is U.S. women's national team, but there are some others. England is second at 15, and then Sweden at 14. Australia, New Zealand with 10, and then a handful of others in Germany, France in that league. But yeah, it's England.
Yeah, which is a change from 4 years ago.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just thought that was I saw this, I just saw a bunch of I was looking at the rosters on Wikipedia because that's where they have all the rosters. And I'm like,
sure.
A lot of England flags going up here. This is interesting. So,
and hey, I like what they're doing in the women's game.
Yeah. I think that the English Women's Supers League is the deepest, maybe not deepest, because I think NWSL is pretty deep too, but maybe the deepest in Europe because the other leagues have 2 good teams and then everyone else. But NWSL,
that it's tied to the men's leagues. I feel like it gives a lot of stability
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing about England too is in the men's game that you have your big 4, 6, or 7, whatever you want to call it is now, but there's such more healthy football clubs there as opposed to Spain. So it translates to the women's game where you have Reading and Everton who have really solid women's teams, as well as Chelsea, Man United, Man City, Arsenal.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, Caleb, I held you for a long time. We talked about a lot of soccer, U.S. men, U.S. women. Before you get out of here, where can we find you on Twitter and the like?
USMNT Corner on Twitter. Also created an Instagram last time we were on. I mentioned it. Just, why not put something out there? Mostly active on the Twitters. And J. Caleb Cook 1 is my personal. So.
Well, I appreciate it. Hopefully our Atlanta United can pull some things out. But in the meantime, at least we have some positive performances from U.S. men and hopefully some positive performances from the U.S. women to look forward to until that time comes.
Yeah, to kind of, help a little bit of that hurt from Atlanta. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kayla, for being on here. Don't forget to please subscribe to this Soccer Down Here on whatever podcast you're listening. You can get all the daily shows and all that. You'll hear my voice on there on occasion. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. And again, thank you, Caleb. Thanks for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.